Captain Hansol Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, staring at the dead screen that had just finished broadcasting humanity's death sentence. The silence stretched across the bridge like a heavy blanket. His crew waited for orders, but Hansol could only think about the images they had all just witnessed: Mars colony burning, Europa station cracking apart like an egg, the mining platforms around Jupiter turned to twisted metal and floating corpses. 3 months of systematic destruction, and now the Zorath Empire wanted to finish the job. "Sir?" Commander Jiwoo Park stepped forward. Her voice was steady, but Hansol could see the rage burning in her eyes. She had family on Luna Base. Had family. The Zorath message played again on the emergency channel. War Marshal Vextar's voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect human English with that cold, mechanical tone all Zorath used when dealing with lesser species, humans of Earth. "Your colonial forces have been eliminated. Your military installations have been destroyed. Your species now faces a choice. Surrender unconditionally within 72 hours. Submit to relocation and work camps. Earth will be spared orbital bombardment. Refuse and your homeworld burns like all the others." The transmission ended with coordinates for surrender, as if humans would actually crawl to their knees and beg. Chief Engineer Taemin Lee looked up from his console. The young man's hands were shaking, but not from fear. "Captain, I'm reading over 200 Zorath ships moving toward Earth. They'll be here in 60 hours, 200 ships against one. The Retribution was humanity's last operational warship. Every other vessel had been destroyed defending the colonies or was too damaged to fight. Earth's planetary defense grid was impressive, but it wouldn't stop a fleet that size." Dr. So-Young Choi spoke quietly from her station. "The civilian evacuation ships won't be ready for another week. There are still billions of people on Earth." Hansol closed his eyes. He thought about his daughter Mi-jung, safe in the underground shelters of Seoul. He thought about all the children hiding in bunkers across the planet, waiting for their parents to save them. He thought about the Zorath work camps they had seen, in intelligence reports. Humans worked to death in alien mines treated like animals. "Communications," he said finally. "Open a channel to the Zorath fleet." Communications specialist Insu Bei's fingers flew over his controls. "Channel open, sir." Hansol straightened his uniform and faced the main screen. When Vextar's image appeared, the War Marshal looked exactly like every other Zorath officer. Tall, gray-skinned, with those cold black eyes that showed no emotion. They all looked the same to humans. Maybe that was the point. "War Marshal Vextar," Hansol said. His voice carried across space, broadcasting to every Zorath ship in the fleet. "I am Captain Hansol Kim of the United Earthship Retribution. I speak for humanity." Vextar's expression didn't change. "Captain Kim, have you contacted me to discuss surrender terms?" "No." Hansol let the word hang in space. "I contacted you to give you a message. We reject your terms, all of them." For the first time, something flickered in Vextar's eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or confusion. The Zorath had conquered 47 species in the past century. They all surrendered when faced with impossible odds. "Captain Kim, perhaps you do not understand your situation. You have 1 ship. We have 200. Your colonies are destroyed. Your military is broken. Surrender is your only option." Hansol smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "Marshal, perhaps you don't understand our situation. Yes, you've killed our people, you've destroyed our homes, you've murdered our children." His voice grew harder with each word. "You've taken everything we love and turned it to ash." He leaned forward, looking directly into those alien eyes. "That was your mistake. You see, humans are dangerous when we have something to lose, but we're absolutely deadly when we have nothing left." Vextar's jaw tightened slightly. "You cannot win, Captain Kim." "Maybe not," Hansol agreed. "But we can make you pay for every meter of space between here and Earth. We can show you what happens when you corner a species that refuses to die quietly." The bridge crew stood straighter. Weapons Officer Dongjun Song checked his targeting systems. Navigator Young Mi-shin began plotting attack vectors. They all knew the odds, but they also knew they had a choice. Die on their knees or die fighting. This is your final warning, Vextar said. Surrender now, or face the consequences. Han Solo's smile grew colder. Marshal, let me explain something about humans. When someone threatens our families, our children, our homes, we don't surrender. We don't negotiate. We don't show mercy. He gestured to his crew. Look around this bridge. Every person here has lost someone to your fleet. My tactical officer's brother died defending Europa. My engineer's parents were killed on Mars. My doctor treated refugees from your attacks before coming aboard. Vextar remained silent. You wanted an answer to your ultimatum, Han Solo continued. Here it is. Come and try. The channel closed. The bridge erupted in activity. Young Mai immediately began plotting a course toward the asteroid belt. Taemin started warming up the experimental weapon systems he had been working on for months. Dongjun ran diagnostics on every missile and energy weapon the ship carried. Ji-Woo moved to Han Solo's side. Orders, Captain. Han Solo looked at the tactical display showing 200 red dots moving toward Earth. His ship was one small blue dot, alone against an armada. The smart thing would be to run. The safe thing would be to hide. The human thing was to fight. We're going to show them what one angry human ship can do, he said. Set course for the Jupiter system. We'll use the radiation and the moons to mask our approach. Sir, Dr. So-Young said quietly. We're really doing this? One ship against their entire fleet? Han Solo turned to face his crew. These brave souls, who could have evacuated to Earth, who could have hidden in the bunkers but chose instead to stand and fight. Doctor, they killed billions of our people. They destroyed our colonies. They murdered children and called it military necessity. His voice grew quiet, deadly. Now they expect us to bow down and thank them for the privilege of becoming slaves. He looked back at the tactical display. One ship against 200? Those are the best odds humanity has had in months. The retribution turned toward the outer system, beginning a hunt that would echo across the galaxy for generations. Behind them, the Zorath fleet continued its approach to Earth, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea they were about to face humanity's greatest weapon, a people with absolutely nothing left to lose. The retribution moved through Jupiter's shadow like a predator stalking prey. Captain Han Solo watched the tactical display as 12 Zorath ships approached the gas giant. They were scouts, sent ahead to clear the outer system before the main fleet arrived. Range to targets? Han Solo asked quietly. 50,000 kilometers in closing, Weapons Officer Dongjun Song reported. His hands moved steadily over his controls, but Han Solo could see the tension in his shoulders. This would be Dongjun's first real combat. They were all about to find out what human weapons could do against Zorath shields. Navigator Young Mi Shin had done excellent work. The retribution was hidden in Jupiter's radiation shadow, invisible to most sensors. The enemy scouts were flying in a standard formation, confident and careless. They had no idea death was waiting for them. Chief, Taemin, status on the new weapons? Han Solo asked. Chief Engineer Taemin Lee looked up from his engineering console. The young man had spent the last 6 months designing new weapon systems based on captured Zorath technology. Now they would see if his theories worked in actual combat. Plasma lances are charged and ready, Captain. The focusing arrays are stable. But sir, we've never tested them at full power. Today seems like a good day to try, Ji-Woo said grimly. Communications specialist Insu Bei turned from his station. Captain, I'm intercepting Zorath tactical chatter. They're reporting no contacts. They think the system is clear. Han Solo smiled. Coldly. The Zorath were about to learn an important lesson about human ingenuity. When faced with superior numbers and technology, humans didn't fight fair. They fought smart. All stations, prepare for combat, Han Solo announced. Remember, we hit hard and fast, then disappear. We're not here to win a stand-up fight. We're here to show them that humans bite back. The crew responded with quiet efficiency. Dr. So-Young Choi moved to the medical station, preparing for casualties. Master Chief Jun-Ho Lim checked the ship's defensive systems. Everyone knew their job. Targets acquired, Dongjun reported. Plasma lances locked on the lead cruiser. Fire, Han Sol ordered. The Retribution's experimental weapons spoke for the first time in anger. Brilliant white beams of superheated plasma shot across space at nearly the speed of light. The lead Zorath cruiser's shields flared and died. The plasma lances punched through its hull like paper, cutting the ship in half. The other 11 ships scattered, but they were too late. Dongjun was already firing again. 2 more cruisers exploded as the plasma beams sliced through their engine sections. A 4th ship lost its weapon systems and began spinning helplessly. By the Earth, young Mi whispered. Those lances just cut right through them. But the Zorath weren't helpless. The surviving ships were already returning fire. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the Retribution. Han Sol felt the ship shake as enemy fire found its mark. Shields down to 60%, Taemin reported. Hull damage on decks 7 and 8. Get us out of here, Han Sol ordered. Young Mi, take us into the asteroid belt, full stealth. The Retribution dove toward the asteroid field between Jupiter and Mars. Behind them, the surviving Zorath. Ships gave chase, but they were too slow. Human engines were built for speed and maneuverability. Zorath engines were built for power and endurance. We're clear, young Mi reported as they disappeared into the swirling field of rocks and ice. 8 enemy ships destroyed or disabled. 3 are still following, but they're falling behind. Han Sol looked at the tactical display. In less than 5 minutes, they had eliminated 2/3 of the enemy scouting force. The cost, moderate shield damage, and some hull scoring. Not bad for humanity's first offensive action against the Zorath. Outstanding work, everyone, Han Sol said. Dongjun, your targeting was perfect. Taemin, those plasma lances exceeded all expectations. The young engineer beamed with pride. The Zorath use particle shields designed to stop energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. But plasma exists in a state between energy and matter. Their shields don't know how to handle it. Sir, Insu interrupted. I'm picking up communications from the surviving scouts. They're reporting to the main fleet. Han Sol nodded. This was expected. The Zorath would know they were facing active resistance now, but they would also know that humans had developed new weapons that could punch through their defenses. What are they saying? Jiwoo asked. Insu listened to his headphones for a moment. They're calling us the ghost ship. They say we appeared from nowhere, destroyed their formation, then vanished. The surviving commander is requesting immediate reinforcements. Good, Han Sol said. Let them worry. Let them wonder where we'll strike next. Dr. So Young looked up from her medical readings. Captain, we have 17 injured crew members from the shaking during combat. Nothing serious, mostly bruises and cuts. But this was just a probe. What happens when we face their main battle fleet? It was a fair question. The Retribution was powerful for a human ship, but it was still just one vessel. The Zorath main fleet included heavy battleships and carriers that could launch hundreds of fighters. We don't fight their main fleet, Han Sol explained. We pick off their scouts. We hit their supply ships. We make them afraid to spread out. We use the entire solar system as our battlefield. He pointed to the tactical display showing the inner system. Every asteroid, every moon, every comet becomes a place we might be hiding. They'll have to search everywhere, guard everything. That spreads their forces thin. Psychological warfare, Jiwoo said, understanding. We make them paranoid. Exactly. The Zorath are used to fighting straightforward battles against inferior opponents. Fleet versus fleet, ship versus ship. They don't know how to handle guerrilla tactics. Ensign Kyunghwa Jang looked up from her intelligence station. The young officer had joined the crew just before the war began. Her family had been killed in the Europa attack, and now she worked with cold, focused hatred. Captain, I've been analyzing the combat data from our first engagement. The Zorath ships showed several tactical weaknesses. They don't coordinate well during surprise attacks. Their formation discipline breaks down when they take unexpected casualties. What do you recommend? Han Sol asked. Hit and run attacks on isolated ships. Force them to bunch up for mutual protection. Then use their close formation against them. Han Sol nodded approvingly. The young woman was thinking like a human warrior should. Good analysis, Ensign. Work with Commander Jiwoo to identify the best targets. The Retribution continued deeper into the asteroid belt. Around them, millions of rocks tumbled in their ancient dance around the sun. Each one could hide a ship. Each shadow could conceal an ambush. Captain, Youngmi said, I'm detecting 3 Zorath supply ships moving toward Mars. They're heavily loaded but lightly defended. How lightly? Jiwoo asked. 2 escort cruisers. The supply ships themselves are unarmed. Han Sol considered this. Supply ships meant food, fuel, and ammunition for the main fleet. Destroying them would force the Zorath to divert warships for convoy duty. More ships protecting supplies meant fewer ships available for combat. Set an intercept course, he decided, but keep us hidden until the last possible moment. I want to see the look in their eyes when they realize death has found them. The Retribution altered course, moving silently through the asteroid field. Its prey moved steadily toward Mars, unaware that humanity's vengeance was closing in. Sir, Insu reported, I'm picking up a transmission from the main Zorath fleet to War Marshal Vextar. What are they saying? Insu's expression grew grim. They're reporting that the human ship is more dangerous than expected. Vextar is ordering all ships to travel in groups of no less than 6 vessels. Han Sol smiled coldly. Then we'll just have to kill 6 at a time instead of 3. The hunt continued. The supply convoy never saw them coming. The Retribution emerged from behind a spinning asteroid like a nightmare made real. Captain Han Sol watched as Weapons Officer Dong Jun Song targeted all 5 enemy ships simultaneously. The plasma lances, fired in perfect sequence, cutting through the 2 escort cruisers first, then destroying the supply ships in brilliant explosions of fuel and ammunition. All targets destroyed, Dong Jun reported with grim satisfaction. Any survivors? Dr. So Young asked. Negative, Communications Specialist Insu Bei replied. Complete destruction of all vessels. Han Sol felt no satisfaction in the kills. Each destroyed ship brought them closer to saving Earth, but it also meant they were becoming something darker. Something the old Han Sol might not have recognized. That's the 4th supply convoy this week, Commander Jiwoo Park noted. The main Zorath fleet will be running low on provisions soon. It had been 2 weeks since their first engagement, 2 weeks of hit-and-run attacks that had cost the enemy over 60 ships. The Retribution had become a ghost story, whispered in fear across Zorath communication channels. They called it the Death Shadow and reported sightings, even when the human ship was on the other side of the system, but the hunt was taking its toll. Damage report, Han Sol ordered. Chief Engineer Taemin Lee's voice was tired. Port shield generator is offline. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 9 are temporarily sealed. We're down to 60% on the plasma lance capacitors. The ship shuddered around them, a reminder that they were pushing both vessel and crew beyond safe limits. They had been fighting non-stop, sleeping in shifts, eating combat rations. Everyone looked exhausted. Captain, Navigator Young Mi Shin called out, I'm detecting a large formation moving toward the inner system. 40 ships, including at least 6 heavy cruisers. Han Sol studied the tactical display. The Zorath were adapting faster than he had hoped. Instead of sending out vulnerable small groups, they were now moving in massive formations that would be impossible for one ship to attack. They're learning, Jiwoo observed. Yes, but so are we, Han Sol replied. Young Mi, can you plot a course through the solar wind stream near Mercury? I want to use the radiation interference. Sir, that's incredibly dangerous. The radiation levels could kill us all. The Zorath think it's impossible too. That's why they won't expect us there. Ensign Kyunghwa Jang looked up from her intelligence station. The young woman had lost weight in the past weeks, and her eyes held a cold light that worried Han Sol. She was becoming as ruthless as he was. Captain, I've been monitoring Zorath communications. They're getting frustrated. Their commanders are arguing about how to deal with us. Good, Han Sol said. Frustrated enemies make mistakes. There's something else, Kyunghwa continued. They've captured survivors from the Titan mining station. The bridge went silent. Titan had been destroyed 3 days ago. but no one had expected survivors. How many? Dr. So-Young asked quietly. Unknown. But they're broadcasting their interrogation on all frequencies. They want us to know they have human prisoners. Hansol's jaw tightened. This was psychological warfare turned back against them. The Zorath were learning human tactics and using them. Sir, Insu interrupted. Incoming transmission from the Zorath fleet. It's War Marshal Vextar. The main screen flickered to life, showing the alien commander's cold features. Behind him, Hansol could see human faces. Men and women in the gray uniforms of the mining crews, their hands bound, their faces marked by recent beatings. Captain Kim, Vextar said in his emotionless voice. I believe you recognize these individuals. Hansol forced himself to remain calm, but his hands clenched into fists. What do you want, Marshal? An end to this pointless resistance. You have fought admirably, but you cannot win. Surrender now, and these prisoners will be treated according to galactic conventions. One of the prisoners, a woman with sergeant's stripes, looked directly into the camera. Don't listen to him, Captain. They killed the wounded. They shot prisoners who couldn't keep up. A Zorath guard struck her with the butt of his weapon. She collapsed but kept glaring at the camera. Continue your attacks, Vextar continued calmly. And these prisoners will share the fate of their wounded companions. The choice is yours. The transmission ended. The bridge remained silent for long moments. Finally, Dr. So-Young spoke. Captain, we can't let them execute those prisoners. We can't save them by surrendering either. Jiwoo replied harshly. You heard what the sergeant said. The Zorath are already killing prisoners. Hansol stared at the blank screen. This was the moment he had dreaded. The moment when the enemy forced him to choose between his mission and his humanity. Master Chief Lim, he called out. The veteran Marine stepped forward. Master Chief Jun-Ho Lim had served in 3 colonial wars and trained boarding parties for ship-to-ship combat. If anyone could plan a prisoner rescue, it was him. Sir? How many Marines do we have left? 18 combat ready, sir, plus 6 walking wounded who insist they can fight. Could you board a Zorath ship and extract prisoners? Lim's scarred face considered the question. Depends on the ship, sir. A cruiser? Maybe. A battleship? Probably not. We'd need to disable their shields first, and that means getting close enough for them to pound us into scrap. What if we had a distraction? Something to keep their attention while you went aboard? That might work, Lim admitted, but it would be a one-way mission for whoever creates the distraction. Hansol nodded slowly. He had expected as much. Captain, Kyunghwa said suddenly, I'm detecting the Zorath formation changing course. They're heading directly for Earth at maximum speed. The tactical display showed the enemy fleet accelerating toward humanity's homeworld. The 40-ship formation was moving faster than expected, burning fuel reserves to cut travel time. They're tired of hunting us, Jiwoo realized. They're going straight for the final objective. Hansol calculated distances and time factors. The Zorath would reach Earth in 18 hours. The planet's defense grid would hold them for perhaps 6 hours against those numbers. Then the bombardment would begin. Sir, Youngmi said quietly, if we intercept them now, we can't avoid a direct confrontation. No hit-and-run tactics, no hiding in asteroids, just us against 40 ships in open space. I know, Hansol replied. Captain, Dr. So-Young said, there are still evacuation ships leaving Earth, civilian transports full of children and families. If we can buy them more time. Hansol looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew, these brave souls who had followed him into hell and never complained. They knew what he was asking. They knew it was probably suicide. All hands, this is the captain, he announced over the ship's communication system. The enemy fleet is moving to attack Earth. We're going to intercept them. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I won't lie to you. The odds are impossible. 40 ships against 1. But every minute we delay them is another minute for Earth's defenders to prepare. Another minute for civilian transports to reach safety. The ship's crew listened in silence. Anyone who wants to transfer to the escape pods may do so now. No shame in it. You've all done more than duty requires. Hansol waited. No one moved. "Very well," he said finally. "All stations prepare for battle. Set course to intercept the Zorath fleet." The Retribution turned toward its fate, carrying the fury of humanity against impossible odds. Behind them, the asteroids and radiation shadows that had sheltered them for weeks fell away. Ahead waited the largest space battle in human history. "Sir," Insu reported, "the Zorath are responding to our course change. Vextar is broadcasting on all frequencies." "Let's hear it." The War Marshal's voice filled the bridge. "Captain Kim, you cannot hope to defeat this fleet in open combat. This is suicide." Hansol activated the reply channel. "Marshal, let me tell you something about humans. When someone threatens our world, our families, our children, we don't calculate odds. We don't surrender." He looked at his crew, these magnificent people who chose duty over safety. "We fight." The battle began at maximum weapons range with the Retribution diving straight into the heart of the Zorath formation. Captain Han Sol had abandoned all pretense of tactical caution. This wasn't about winning anymore. This was about making the enemy pay such a terrible price that they would remember humanity forever. All weapons continuous fire. Weapons Officer Dong Jun Song's hands flew over his controls. The plasma lances spoke again and again, cutting through enemy shields and hulls with devastating effect. The Zorath returned fire with everything they had, 40 ships unleashing their fury at one target. The space around the Retribution exploded. In brilliant flashes of energy and missile detonations, shields failing, Chief Engineer Tae-Min Lee shouted over the roar of exploding systems. Hull breaches on every deck, but the human ship kept fighting. Commander Ji-Woo Park had taken over tactical coordination, directing their fire at the most dangerous targets. 3 Zorath heavy cruisers died in the first 5 minutes of combat, their wreckage spinning away into space. "Direct hit on engineering," Dr. So-Young Choi called from her damage control station. "I need medical teams on decks 6 and 7. The ship shuddered as another missile salvo found its mark. Lights flickered throughout the bridge. The smell of smoke and burning electronics filled the air. But still they fought on. "Captain," Communications Specialist In-Soo Bae turned from his station with excitement. "I'm intercepting panic communications from the Zorath fleet. Their formation is breaking down." It was true. The enemy ships were scattering as their commanders lost their nerve. The systematic destruction of their escorts had turned the organized fleet into a mob of frightened individual ships. They expected easy prey. Navigator Young Mi-shin observed, blood running from a cut on her forehead. They got a wolf instead. Hansol allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. The Retribution was dying, but they were taking the enemy fleet with them. Already 8 Zorath ships had been destroyed, and twice that many were damaged and retreating. "Sir," Ensign Kyung-Hwa Jang called out, "I'm detecting the ship carrying our prisoners. It's a heavy cruiser. Designation Dominant Strike. Range 15,000 kilometers. Hansol looked at the tactical display. The enemy ship was at the edge of weapons range, protected by 4 escort vessels. A difficult target under the best circumstances, impossible under current conditions. "Master, Chief Lim," he called. The Marine commander stepped forward, his armor scarred by shrapnel from the last explosion. "Sir, can your team still execute a boarding action?" Lim's weathered face split in a fierce grin. "Give me a way onto that ship, Captain, and I'll bring our people home." "Tae-Min," Hansol turned to his chief engineer. "What's the status on the experimental reactor overload?" The young man's eyes widened. They had discussed the possibility weeks ago. A controlled fusion reactor explosion that could take out multiple enemy ships, but using it would mean certain death for the Retribution. "It's ready, sir. But once I start the sequence, we have maybe 10 minutes before the reactor goes critical." "That's enough time," Master Chief Lim said grimly. "Get me close to that cruiser, and I'll extract the prisoners." Hansol nodded. "Do it. All hands prepare for boarding action and reactor overload sequence." The Retribution changed course, diving toward the Dominant Strike like a missile aimed at the heart of the enemy formation. The Zorath ships responded immediately, concentrating their fire on the approaching human vessel, shields completely down. Taman reported. We're taking direct hull hits. The ship's structure groaned and twisted under the enemy bombardment. Entire sections were open to space, but the human vessel continued its death ride toward the prisoner ship. Range to target? Hansol asked. 8,000 kilometers, Young-Mi replied, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Close. Enough, Lim declared. Marines to the assault shuttles. 24 men and women, the last of humanity's space marines, ran through corridors filled with smoke and debris. Their mission was simple. Board the enemy ship, find the prisoners, and extract them before the Retribution's reactor exploded. Sir? Dr. So Young appeared at Hansol's side, her medical coat torn and bloody. Half the crew is dead or wounded. The ship won't hold together much longer. It doesn't need to, Hansol replied. It just needs to hold together long enough. The Retribution shuddered as docking clamps engaged with the Zorath cruiser. Emergency airlocks sealed the two ships together in a deadly embrace. The Marines stormed aboard the enemy vessel with weapons blazing. Taemin, initiate reactor overload sequence, Hansol ordered. Reactor overload initiated, the young engineer replied with calm professionalism. 9 minutes 30 seconds to critical explosion. On the tactical display, Hansol watched the Marine assault teams moving through the enemy ship. Their progress was marked by the bodies of Zorath soldiers who had underestimated human desperation in close combat. I've found them. Master Chief Lim's voice crackled over the communication system. 17 prisoners, all alive, but sir, they've got the entire ship's security force between us and the exit. Copy that, Chief. How long do you need? Give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes. With 4 minutes left before the reactor exploded, all remaining crew, Hansol announced. Prepare to evacuate to the enemy ship. We're taking it as our own. It was insanity. A handful of humans trying to capture a Zorath heavy cruiser with nothing but small arms and determination. But insanity was all they had left. Sir, Insu reported, War Marshal Vextar is demanding we surrender. He says if we release his ship, he'll spare the remaining crew. Hansol laughed, a harsh sound that held no humor. Tell the Marshal that humans don't negotiate with child killers. The bridge shook as Zorath security forces tried to retake their own ship. Human and alien blood mixed in the corridors as desperate battles raged throughout the cruiser. 3 minutes to reactor overload, Taemin announced. Chief Lim, status report. Prisoners secured, but were pinned down in the main corridor. Heavy resistance. Hansol looked at his remaining bridge crew. Young-Mi, bleeding from multiple wounds, but still at her station. Insu, working his communications console with one arm in a makeshift sling. Dr. So Young, treating injured crew members even as explosions rocked the ship around them. Time to go, he said simply. They abandoned the bridge of the Retribution and fought their way onto the Zorath cruiser. The corridors were filled with smoke, the walls scorched by weapons fire. Human Marines held defensive positions while their rescued prisoners were moved to safety. 1 minute to reactor overload, came Taemin's voice from wherever he had taken refuge. The Zorath defenders fell back as more humans poured onto their ship. These aliens had faced many enemies, but never any who fought with such desperate fury. Never any who preferred death to defeat. 30 seconds, all hands brace for explosion, Hansol shouted. The Retribution's reactor went critical in a blast that lit up space like a newborn star. The explosion took out 6 enemy ships that had moved too close, including 2 heavy cruisers. The shockwave crippled a dozen more. But the dominant strike survived, now under human control. Hansol stood on the bridge of his captured vessel, looking at the tactical display. The Zorath fleet was in complete disarray, ships fleeing in all directions. War Marshal Vextar's flagship trying desperately to restore order to the chaos. Sir, Insu called from the alien communication console he was learning to operate. The enemy is requesting a ceasefire. They want to negotiate. No negotiations, Hansol replied coldly. No quarter, no mercy. He activated the ship's communication system, broadcasting to the scattered Zorath fleet. This is Captain Hansol Kim. You came to our system to murder our children and enslave our people. You showed no mercy to civilian targets. You executed prisoners of war." He paused, looking at the faces of his crew. These magnificent humans, who had followed him through hell and somehow survived. Now you will learn what happens when you refuse mercy to a species that remembers everything. The captured cruiser turned toward the fleeing enemy ships, its weapons charging for another attack. The hunt was far from over. "Sir," Young Mai reported, "I'm detecting 43 enemy vessels still operational, but they're scattered across the system." "Then we hunt them down one by one," Han Sol decided. "No survivors, no witnesses. Let the galaxy know that humanity keeps its promises." The war had changed both sides. The Zorath had learned fear. The humans had learned that sometimes mercy was a luxury they could not afford. The final battle took place in the space between Mars and Earth, where War Marshal Vextar had gathered the remnants of his once mighty fleet. 68 ships remained from the original 200, and their crews were no longer the confident conquerors who had arrived weeks earlier. They were frightened soldiers facing an enemy that refused to die. Captain Hansol Kim stood on the bridge of the captured Zorath heavy cruiser, Dominant Strike, now renamed Vengeance. Around him, his surviving crew worked at alien control stations. They had learned to operate through necessity and determination. The ship bore the scars of countless battles, but it was still fighting. "Enemy formation ahead," Navigator Young Mi Shin reported. Her left arm was in a sling from the last engagement, but her voice remained steady. "They're arranged in a defensive sphere around Vextar's flagship." Commander Jiwoo Park studied the tactical display. "It's a strong formation. They're protecting their command ship and forcing us to attack through overlapping fields of fire." Hansol nodded. The Zorath had finally learned to fight like humans, defensively, desperately, using every advantage available. But they had learned too late. "Communications Specialist Insu, are you getting anything from Earth's defense grid?" Insu Bay worked, his controls with practiced efficiency. "Yes, sir. Admiral Chen reports the planetary defense systems are fully charged and ready. They're asking for our status." "Tell them we're about to end this war," Hansol replied. The past 3 weeks had been a nightmare of running battles across the solar system. The Vengeance and her crew had hunted the scattered Zorath ships like wolves pursuing wounded prey. Every engagement had cost them people and resources, but they had never stopped fighting. "Sir," Ensign Kyunghwa Jang called from her intelligence station, "I'm intercepting communications from the enemy fleet. Vextar is trying to maintain order, but several ship commanders are arguing for retreat." Dr. So Young Choi looked up from the medical station she had established on the alien bridge. "Captain, we have 57 crew members still able to fight. We started this war with over 400. The cost had been terrible. Friends, colleagues, fellow humans who had given their lives to protect Earth. Han Sol remembered every name, every face. They deserved better than to die in the cold vacuum of space, but they had chosen this fate willingly. "Master Chief Lim," Han Sol called to the Marine commander, "what's our boarding capability?" Master Chief Junho Lim's scarred face was grim. 12 Marines left, sir, including the walking wounded. Enough for one more assault, but it better count." Chief Engineer Taemin Lee looked up from the alien engineering controls. "Captain, I've been studying the Zorath flagship's design. It has a critical weakness. Their main reactor is protected by shields, but those shields operate on a single control frequency." "Meaning?" "If we can get close enough to jam that frequency, their reactor becomes vulnerable to direct attack." "How close?" Jiwoo asked. "Point-blank range, practically touching." Hansol considered this. A suicide run against the enemy flagship, through 67 defending ships. Even if they succeeded in destroying Vextar's vessel, the Vengeance would never survive. "Sir," Insu interrupted. "Incoming transmission from the Zorath flagship. It's Vextar." The main screen flickered to life, showing the alien war marshal's face. But something had changed in those cold black eyes. Fear. Something Hansol had never seen in a Zorath before. "Captain Kim," Vextar said, "I wish to propose terms for ending this conflict." "I'm listening," Hansol replied. "My fleet will withdraw from your system immediately. We will make no further attempts to conquer human space. In return, you will allow us to leave unharmed. Han pretended to consider this offer. Around him, his crew waited silently. Counter-proposal, Marshal. You surrender unconditionally. Submit your ships to human control. Accept imprisonment as war criminals. Vextar's expression hardened. Impossible. No Zorath fleet has ever surrendered. Then no Zorath fleet has ever faced humans before, Han replied calmly. Captain Kim, be reasonable. You have one ship against 68. You cannot win this battle. Han smiled coldly. Marshal, you said the same thing when you had 200 ships. How did that work out for you? The transmission ended abruptly. All stations, prepare for final assault, Han announced. This is it. Everything we've fought for comes down to the next hour. The Vengeance accelerated toward the enemy formation, her weapons charging for what everyone knew would be the last battle. Behind her, space was littered with the wreckage of both fleets. Ahead waited the final confrontation. Entering weapons range, Weapons Officer Dong Jun-song reported. The young man's hands were steady on the controls despite the impossible odds. Fire at will, Han ordered. The space between the fleets erupted in weapons fire. The Vengeance dove into the heart of the enemy formation like a spear thrust at the enemy's heart. Her plasma lances cut through Zorath shields, destroying 2 cruisers in the opening seconds, but the return fire was devastating. The alien ship shook and groaned under the bombardment from dozens of enemy vessels. Sparks flew from overloaded control systems. The smell of burning electronics filled the air. Hull breaches on all decks, Dr. So-young called out over the noise of battle. I'm losing people. Range to flagship, Han shouted. 5,000 kilometers, Young Mai replied. All power to engines. Ram them if we have to. The Vengeance pushed through the enemy formation, trading shots with every ship that blocked her path. Her armor was stripped away layer by layer, her structure twisted by direct hits, but still she fought on. 2,000 kilometers to target. Sir, Taman called from engineering. I can start the reactor overload sequence now, but we'll need to maintain contact with the enemy flagship for at least 30 seconds. Do it, Han ordered. 1,000 kilometers. The Zorath flagship. Dominion's edge loomed ahead, its weapons trained on the approaching human ship. At this range, both vessels could destroy each other instantly. 500 kilometers, contact in 10 seconds. Han activated the ship's communication system one last time. All ships, all stations. This is Captain Han Kim of the Earth. Vessel Vengeance. War Marshal Vextar, you asked for mercy. We offered it once and you refused. The 2 ships collided in a grinding crash of metal against metal. Docking clamps engaged automatically, locking the vessels together. Now receive. The same mercy you showed our children. The Vengeance's reactor went critical, taking both ships in an explosion that could be seen from Earth. The blast vaporized the Zorath flagship and crippled a dozen nearby vessels. The shock waves scattered the remaining enemy fleet like leaves in a hurricane. But in the final seconds before the explosion, 12 figures in human space armor had launched themselves toward the nearest enemy ship. Master Chief Lim and his Marines carrying on the fight even as their own vessel died. The battle was over. Of the mighty Zorath invasion fleet, only 37 ships remained operational. Their command structure was destroyed, their will to fight broken. One by one, they began to surrender or flee the system. Earth was safe. 3 days later, Captain Han Kim stood in the observation deck of a captured Zorath cruiser, now serving as a temporary command ship for the surviving human forces. Through the viewport, he could see Earth turning slowly in space, blue and beautiful and alive. Sir, Insu approached, carrying a communication tablet. Admiral Chen is asking for your report on the battle. Han took the tablet but didn't immediately write anything. What could he say? That 63 humans in a single ship had defeated an armada? That they had saved their species by becoming something darker than their enemies? Sir, Dr. So-young joined them. The medical reports are complete. We lost 347 crew members during the campaign, 56 survivors, most with permanent injuries. And the enemy casualties? Complete destruction of 163 Zorath vessels. Estimated crew losses of over 40,000. 40,000 alien lives to save 8 billion human ones. The mathematics of war reduced to simple numbers, but Han Solo knew it was more complex than that. They had changed something fundamental. In the galaxy, they had shown that humanity would not go quietly into extinction. Captain, young me appeared, walking slowly with the aid of a crutch. I'm receiving communications from other species throughout the galaxy. They all want to know about the battle. What are they saying? Most are shocked that such a small force could defeat a major Zorath fleet. Some are frightened. The Altarians are requesting formal diplomatic relations. The Vegan Confederacy wants to discuss a mutual defense treaty. Han Solo nodded. Humanity had earned its place among the galactic community through blood and determination. Other species now knew that humans were not victims to be easily conquered. And the Zorath Empire? Their High Command has issued a formal statement. They're withdrawing all military forces from this sector of space. They're also apologizing for the unprovoked attacks on human colonies. Han Solo almost smiled at that. The first apology in Zorath military history, forced from them by fear and respect. Sir, Insu said quietly, there's something else. The survivors from the prisoner camp on Titan, they've all requested to join whatever military force humanity establishes. They want to serve under your command.